each win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
they literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous.
should we stop sending money to the French until they stop the boats? And
longest waiting, 46 hours, the longest one. And it's going to be 4 hours.
NHS staff laugh about missing waiting times. Can any party fix this mess? Plus, could Labour make it illegal for a parent to tell their own child that they're not trans? And well, Julian Assange is free, but is he a hero or a villain? Also, a postman has been caught writing the word racist on reform leaflets. Should he be sacked? And winner, winner, chicken dinner.
GB News Breakfast. Nigel Farage.
Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
Yes, well done, everybody. We won the hat-trick at the Trick Awards, didn't we? On my panel tonight is journalist Harriet Sargent, political guru at The Spectator, James Heal, and columnist at The Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Oh, yes, and can you tell me what happens next here? Get ready, Britain, here we go. If the NHS is a sacred cow, should we just slaughter it? Next.
The top story tonight. 4 men have been arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass at the Prime Minister's constituency home in Yorkshire. Police said officers were with the 4 men within a minute of them entering the grounds. The men, who are aged between 20 and 52, remain in police custody for questioning. Inquiries, we understand, are ongoing. The suspended Labour candidate Kevin Craig says he's deeply regretting betting against himself and taking a punt on the Tories winning in his own constituency. He says he will fully comply with any investigation. That comes after former Conservative candidates Craig Williams and Laura Saunders also face questions amid allegations of betting on the date of the general election. Mr Williams says he committed an error of judgment but not an offence. A former engineer who worked on the faulty Horizon IT system claims the Post Office tried to put words into his mouth when he attempted to disclose concerns he had about the software. Gareth Jenkins was with Fujitsu for his whole professional career and was regarded as distinguished right up until his retirement in 2015. He said that he's truly sorry for his wrongful convictions, but evidence he gave about the Horizon IT system was used in the prosecutions of many sub-postmasters. Those convictions have since been quashed. He told today's inquiry he never had oversight on all of the system's bugs and relied on others to supply reliable information. Julian Assange will soon appear before a federal judge in the Mariana Islands, that's a US territory, in the Western Pacific. The 52-year-old founder of WikiLeaks left the UK this morning after more than 1,900 days at Belmarsh Prison. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain, meaning he'll most likely walk free. It's understood he'll plead guilty to a single count of illegally obtaining and disclosing national security information. Now, the King's new family order has been sworn in for the very first time by the Queen at the Japanese state banquet. Queen Camilla stepped out wearing the miniature portrait of her husband on a pale blue bow for the event in the Buckingham Palace ballroom. The unveiling of the new King Charles III family order comes nearly 2 years after he acceded as monarch following the death of his mother. And you're probably keeping tabs. England are 0-0 at half-time, with the second half kicking off against Slovenia in the Euros as the Lions aim to secure the top spot of their group. England currently sitting at the top of Group C. If you're watching on television, you can see this is the fan zone in central London, eagerly awaiting for England to get their act together against Slovenia, but victory tonight could mean they avoid a difficult test in round 16. It's after a lot of criticism of their performances following that narrow win over Serbia last week and their 1-1 draw against Denmark as well. We wish them well. For the latest stories, sign up for GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Can anyone save the NHS? Some treat it like a religion, not to ever be questioned or criticised, while an ever-growing minority of common-sense folk are a bit more realistic about its clear failures and uncertain future. A fact devastatingly brought home by a Channel 4 Dispatches documentary, Undercover A&E, NHS in Crisis. Now, you might have missed this, but just look at how some A&E staff at one hospital react to failings to hit their targets.
Longest waiting, 46 hours, the longest one. It's going to be 4 hours. But
these people have been in 46.
yeah, so we're not hitting any targets.
NHS England is keen to stress that such scenes are not commonplace, but the fact remains that between April 2023 and March 2024, nearly 400,000 people were left waiting more than 24 hours across A&E departments, a 5% rise on the previous year. And this is not a staff culture problem. It must run a lot deeper than that. So is there any hope of saving our sickly health service? Well, should we have a little look at what some of the parties are thinking of doing about this? Labour has promised to lean on the private sector to hit an 18-week NHS waiting target within 5 years.
Mention the NHS, and we have put figures on that. We've said that we'd end the non-dom tax loophole for the super wealthy, which would give us 40,000 extra appointments every week in our NHS to bring down the 8 million people waiting on waiting lists currently across the UK, so that we can clear that backlog before the end of the next Parliament.
Yes, non-doms again, isn't it? Those non-doms do a heck of a lot of heavy lifting, and obviously Keir Starmer won't be taking the pressure off the NHS. He would never go private, would he? But the Conservatives point out that they're giving the NHS record funding, which, to be fair, they are, as well as training new doctors and nurses, and say only a strong economy and innovation can solve the NHS's issues.
put record funding in, we're training more doctors and nurses, we're doing more checks and scans, and what I want you to know is that the NHS is safe in my hands. I will always stand up for it to give you and everyone else the peace of mind that it will be there for you and your families when you need it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we do have a load of striking doctors and staff, don't we, that clearly don't particularly like the Tories. Lib Dems now, their leader, Sir Ed Davey, says the NHS is front and centre of his party's manifesto.
Well, we've made the NHS and care the centre point of our manifesto with a huge package of £9 billion of investment. Partly that's in GPs and local services, so people don't have to go to hospital quite so much. Part of it is in care, so people can be discharged from hospital. And that relates to ambulance services. We've seen in many parts of the country delays at hospitals for the handover because there aren't enough beds because people haven't been able to be discharged. So we've invested in care services so people can leave hospital when they're ready. That's better for them, it's better for their families, and it frees up space in hospital.
OK. And Reform UK leader Nigel Farage wants to see a totally new system brought in.
I look at health and I look across the channel, oddly, at the French, who have a very different system where you pay your health contribution through taxes, but actually to a series of insurance companies, and they compete against each other to provide the best services. If you can't afford it, you're still covered, so it's a mutual system in society. And you know what? If I look at their returns on stroke, heart disease and cancer, they're massively better than ours. There is a better way of doing this. It needs radical thought.
So, who has the right idea? Can anyone save the NHS? Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. I'm going to whiz you over to them. I've got journalist and author Harriet Sarge, and I've got political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal, and GBNews' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Harriet, do we need to just slaughter the sacred cow that is our NHS, rip it up and start again, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm with Nigel Farage on this. And what a relief it was to hear him, because there's this cosy consensus with all the other party leaders that we've just got to fling more money at the NHS and that's going to magically make things better. Well, I spent about 9 months in 6 different NHS hospitals, shadowing staff from porters to CEOs, and I saw many of the scenes, disgraceful scenes described, shown in that documentary. I saw something similar. But I was told by the left that this was, disloyal, anecdotal. So I'm so glad that people can see for themselves what is going on in our NHS and how something needs to be done.
Look, the NHS doesn't work, and there appears to be, and I'm talking about this from personal experience as well, and I dare say that there are people now absolutely screaming at their television screens saying that this has happened to them and their family. There is no accountability when things go wrong and people die on the NHS, James.
Completely, and I saw that last night when we were watching the debate with Rishi Sunak, and as a woman in the audience said, my father died in the NHS, and complained about the kind of negligence that he went through. Ultimately, I think we need a lot of different reforms in the NHS. One thing I'd personally like to see is more protections for whistleblowers, so that those coming forward and raising kind of complaints about this will be able to take them forward in future. But negligence is something the NHS definitely needs more work on, given the kind of stories we hear about it and how galling it is for the victims' families and all of this.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there is a whopping great big culture of cover-up in the NHS that we would not accept anywhere else, which, Nigel, is remarkable, considering we all went out and clapped for them, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got it right when you said the NHS is a religion. And that's been the big problem in this country, that it was founded in 1948, never intended to be the service it became, and we're still using broadly a 1948 model in the 21st century. It doesn't work. At the moment, you can't start thinking about big reform until you've actually sorted out all the immediate problems. So Labour's idea of 2 million extra hospital ops a year to bring the waiting list down, that's got to be done as a short-term thing. In the long term, we then have to start looking at, is this the way to fund it? Nigel Farage got a point. It may be the French spend 21% more on health than we do. It may be their system is worth looking at. At the moment, we've got a situation where everyone says we must have the NHS free at the point of use. It's only been free at the point of use for the first 3 years of its existence, and then it started charging.
Yes.
So dentures came first, and we've then had eyes and teeth, and then prescription charges came in. So so at the moment we're we're in a situation where we can do it because there's already something in the past for it.
So we veered onto now something that I think is important. Go on, you take it.
I was just going to say, I mean, we can make this big fuss about being free at the point of reuse. There's 47 other countries that have free healthcare. So, I mean, this is not a great big
Also, we do pay for it. I mean,
of course we pay for it.
We do
through
all
our
pay in taxes. I mean, it is. I get that. You know, when you go to Wythenshawe Hospital or whatever, you don't produce a credit card at some point. But we are all paying for it. It comes out of our wages. It comes out of everything. You know, the NHS is not free, is it? So what is the solution for you then, Harriet? You know, we were talking a bit there. You said about Nigel Farage, some kind of insurance-based model. Do you think?
Yes, I mean, we can look. There's so many countries that we can look at. You know, Australia, Israel do interesting things. France, Germany. We can look at all of these. I mean, Holland 20 years ago, they had an NHS model and they decided it wasn't fit for purpose and they got rid of it and they've had a much better healthcare system. I mean, I think we've got to realise how serious this is. If there was a report comparing us internationally to 18 other countries, and Keir Starmer, who I don't think is the man who's going to be doing anything about this, unfortunately, he said, you know, when you've got an acute illness, the NHS is the place to be. Well, that's just not true, because cancer, stroke and heart, all of which I would say pretty acute, we come the second from bottom out of 18 countries. There are 6,500 people who would be alive today if they lived in one of those 18 other countries. Well, that's how bad it is.
And James, how can people trust that Sir Keir Starmer is the man to reform the NHS when he's so ideological that he would languish and let his loved ones languish on an NHS waiting list instead of going private, which he can afford to do?
Well, the really fascinating thing is that Wes Streeting, who's the Shadow Health Secretary, I think has been talking a really good game on all this, talking about private capacity, you know, using private healthcare to try and free up space for the NHS. So that's all the more striking, is the fact that Keir Starmer is so different on this. So my concern is that, you know, Wes Streeting, I think, gets the point about the NHS needing fundamental reform, is going to be undermined because you're not going to get the support from the new Prime Minister if he gets elected next week, and you're going to see the traditional Labour concerns, the fear-mongering about privatisation, for instance, and therefore we won't get to enact on some of the interesting things he's been saying about the need to be pragmatic about the NHS in the future.
Yeah. Just final word to you on this, Nigel. Do you think that it's fair to say that actually, you know, not all NHS staff are angels and some of them need a kick at the backside?
Yeah, I think that it probably is, but that's the same with any organisation. So, but most of them are. Most of them are great. I mean, certainly my experiences in the NHS have been predominantly good. Not always, but predominantly good. So that's not really the point. The point basically is that reform is needed. Wes Streeting says it's reform or die, is the phrase he uses. So he is talking about this is the NHS in the last chance saloon at the moment.
Yeah. All right. OK. Well, it's an interesting battleground, isn't it, for this election? Where will we end up? But to a very special programme that I've got for you tomorrow night. So you are invited to be a part of it. Join my live studio audience for Sunak versus Starmer, the verdict on Patrick Christys tonight, as we bring you top analysis and reaction to the final leaders head-to-head of the campaign. I've got some great guests lined up for you. The event begins at 8 p.m. You can find tickets at gbnews.com now. So just go to gbnews.com. You'll see it there. It's splashed all over the place. So go and get your tickets and be a part of it. It really would be great to have so many of you in the studio and get to meet you and interact with you as well. Have your views on the telly. But, yes, it is also the final week to see how you could win our summer giveaway. 15 grand in cold, hard cash and a whole host of treats as well. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, so you've not got long now. Make sure you don't miss out, and here's all the details you'll need.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, French. Text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Now, coming up, Nigel Farage takes aim at the French.
They literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous.
Well, apparently now 50,000 migrants have crossed the Channel since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister and said he'd stop the boats. Is the Reform UK leader right that we should stop sending millions of pounds of your money to France unless they actually stop more of these boats? Ex-Labour MP and MEP Sean Simon is live shortly, but first, are Labour right to pledge a broad ban on trans conversion therapy despite warnings in the Cass report? Essentially, this could really mean that parents might be criminalised if they dare to tell their own child that they might not in fact be trans. Discrimination lawyer Robin Moira-White goes head-to-head with commentator Ollie London, and that's next. Stay tuned.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
We've been talking about the White House is concerned with playing down concerns about the health of President Biden, who's apparently taken to freezing during public events. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was seen herding the president back into a photo with world leaders after he shuffled aimlessly away from the group. In the last few days, videos and images of the president freezing at a fundraising event went viral, but the White House stated that they were deceptively edited cheap fakes. With me now, again, is my panel, the historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop and the associate comment editor of The Telegraph, Mujaz Ahmed. Mujaz, I mean, you are a journalist. What about this idea that in some way the images could be fake?
They could be fake, and some of them will be fake. But the reason these AI images or AI videos or weirdly edited videos are a problem for the White House is that people have seen enough of Biden freezing in real life.
It's not going away, this one. It's perception versus reality, but as Mustafa said, it doesn't matter because it's now become Biden's reality, which is bushfighting these questions about his ability connected to his age. I don't understand where you go from here. He's got a vice president who isn't presidential material, who I think polls worse than he does, despite these, you would call them ageist. In many ways, it's about his competence, isn't it?
It can make a big difference when the president whose competence, mental competence, is under question, is running on the matter of competence itself. They're trying to paint Trump as being incompetent, as being not presidential, as being unable to lead, while they have a candidate who struggles to get off the stage. Yeah. That's the issue for them. And it's not really about age. He's not much older than Trump, as you say. It's about the appearance of age.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, should we stop giving the French millions of pounds until they stop the small boats? That's what Nigel Farage has suggested. Do you agree with him? Former Labour MP and MEP Sean Simon hits back at that shortly. But first, are Labour right to pledge a broad ban on trans conversion therapy? The risk here is that it could criminalise people if they dare to tell a child that they might not be trans. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Yes, well, Sir Keir Starmer has committed to a full ban on conversion therapy if he wins the election, despite warnings that a ban could threaten the freedom of parents and medical professionals to talk to children about gender identity issues. Labour wants to outlaw conversion therapy. Now, this aims to suppress a person's sexuality or gender identity. As they say, it amounts to abuse. And, you know, I think people can understand that maybe some of it is a little bit weird. But Hilary Cass, the author of a landmark review of gender services for children, has warned, I think clinicians will be really worried that if they have conversations with a young person and then they change their gender identity, then they could accuse the person of conversion. Nobody wants to be the first test case. That's the real challenge. Cass also warned that the legal threat posed by a conversion therapy ban could drive professionals away from treating people with gender dysphoria. But despite this, Labour are determined to push the policy through quickly, ideally within their first 100 days in government. No idea why, but that's what they want to do. Women and Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch has now blasted Labour. She says that they're blundering into this space without due care and attention, placing gender ideology over sound policy making, adding that there was a risk the ban could criminalise parents, clinicians and teachers. Tonight I'm asking, are Labour right to pledge a broad ban on trans conversion therapy despite the numerous warnings? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews. Go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, our discrimination lawyer, Robin Moira-White, and social commentator, Ollie London. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Ollie, I'll start with you. The fear here by some people is that this could basically criminalise somebody if they told a child that they might not be trans. Is that a worry for you?
Yeah, it's definitely very problematic. I mean, we can all agree when it comes to gay conversion therapy, that is incredibly wrong, and most people will agree with that. But this is where it gets tricky when it comes to transgender children, because, of course, we see clinicians, therapists, other people trying to help kids that may be struggling with gender dysphoria. We know it is a real thing, but the numbers of children that are struggling with gender identity is really skyrocketing, and this is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. So the issue is that parents, clinicians, therapists may be criminalised for simply trying to help their child find peace with themselves and finally to kind of learn to love themselves. So I think it's very concerning.
Robin, this just feels like a massive backward step. We had the Cash report, we had people coming out and saying this vindicated the likes of J.K. Rowling, etc. And now here we are. Labour, within the first 100 days, could be accused of coming for the nation's kids.
No, come on. As Ollie said, there doesn't seem to be any doubt that gay conversion therapy is close to torture. And if we accept that trans people exist, a practice that denies that we have to define matters properly, we have to write good law, and if you engage in, quotes, therapy or conversion practices which deny a particular outcome as a valid one, there's nothing that prevents a discussion. There's nothing wrong with a discussion and giving people time to think and challenging their views. None of that would be wrong, but what would be wrong would be denying that a particular outcome can be right. And if we write bad law, we deserve what we get. What we need to do is engage with the new administration and make sure that we write good law.
OK, Ollie, I worry that we are heading back towards just total affirmation. So a child comes in and, you know, decides that they are wearing, you know, non-traditional clothing for their particular gender, etc. You know exactly the kind of cases that I'm talking about here. And then instead of being able to have a rational conversation, the quotes-unquote medical professional rushes to affirm the fact that that child is indeed trans and sets them off on a you know, kind of irreversible pathway.
Well, I would argue that in itself is conversion therapy. Taking a healthy kid, a boy that might be effeminate, maybe the boy is gay, he just doesn't understand that at the moment, or maybe the girl is a tomboy, maybe she's a lesbian, and then when a doctor or clinician tells them, you are trans, let's get you, transitioning, that is the wrong approach, because there are many, many kids that need to find themselves on their own. They don't need teachers, they don't need doctors telling them that they're trans. They need to figure that out on their own. And, as an adult, people can make that decision. But I would say that, transitioning kids itself, whether it's teachers in schools or anyone else, is a form of conversion therapy itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might agree with that. Robin, I'm going to ask you another kind of slightly bonkers thing about what Labour did. Initially, so far this election campaign, it was going to make it easier for adults to identify as a different gender, and people thought, well, that might potentially pose a bit of a risk to women's only spaces. And then it became, oh, actually, we're a bit squiffy on whether or not gender ideology is going to be taught to kids in schools. And then now here we are today about whether or not it could essentially criminalise people if they decide to tell a child that they're not, in fact, trans. And this legislation, I believe, was put forward initially by Lloyd Russell Moyle, who has been biffed by the Labour Party. Well, why are they rushing this forward?
Frankly, this legislation was put forward by the Conservative Party in its 2019 manifesto. And it's another one of the failed promises of the last Conservative administration. Kemi Badenoch has been saying that we are rushing into doing this. Well, Kemi's been part of an administration for 5 years that did nothing, didn't have the discussions, didn't have the appropriate talks with the relevant professionals and people involved, and could have worked that through and just ducked the issue completely and has left it for the new administration. Absolutely, there are risks. Absolutely, we need to write good law that takes into account the risks, that doesn't criminalise parents for having a discussion with their children, doesn't criminalise medical professionals for having an appropriate conversation. I transitioned 13 years ago. I had those conversations with a therapist beforehand to ensure that I was indeed trans and I wasn't something else and there wasn't something being hidden there. It's absolutely right to have those discussions because these are really serious decisions.
But I just wonder, Robin, how much more evidence do we need that something is a little bit skew-if here, OK? Because we had issues whereby medical professionals appeared to be rushing to push trans onto kids, or at least affirm that. We know that people are very, very squiffy about what's being taught in schools, etc. We know that there was not really proper medical testing that was being done before people were being put on things like puberty blockers and all of that. Why are we now revisiting this, Robin? Why can't we just let this go? Why is the Labour Party so obsessed with appeasing a fraction of really quite a militant wing of the LGBT community?
Well, so militant that it was a Conservative policy in 2019.
Yeah, all right, fine, but we are where we are now. I get that, Robin, but we are where we are now. So let's just address this now when it comes to Labour Party.
And across the liberal Western democracies, conversion therapy is being banned country by country. We fall behind in the way in which we look after our citizens if we don't go down this route. It's right to go down this route. It's right to go down it carefully and thoughtfully and write good law that protects people and doesn't criminalise people it shouldn't criminalise. But we should stop people torturing gay people and trans people.
OK, Ollie, look, final word to you. When you look around now and you see that this might be about to come in, etc., do you fear for children in an increasingly confusing world, especially with social media, especially with everything that's going on? And I think sexuality and gender issues are perhaps more at the forefront of a child's upbringing than they have been previously. Some people will think that's a good thing, obviously. Other people will think that's quite risky. Are you fearful for kids growing up these days?
Absolutely. It's one thing for an adult to make an informed decision that's best for them, that makes them happy, and that's how they feel. But it's another thing when a child is having this really pushed at them from all angles, whether that's social media on TikTok, whether that's Hollywood films and TV shows, whether that's, RuPaul's Drag Race. I think that is the concern, is when it's being pushed in kids' faces, it's almost become cool. And we see, kids at schools, especially girls, becoming non-binary or trans because it's trendy. Groups and groups of girls in the same classes become non-binary. And it's one thing to wake up one day and feel like that, but when kids are actually going down a medical route, whether they just hit 18 or 19, and when they regret this decision in later life, that is irreversible.
All right, well, both of you, thank you very much. Really great stuff, that. Difficult topic to talk about. I think we did a good job of it, so thank you. Who do you agree with there? Are Labour right to pledge a broad ban on trans conversion therapy, despite warnings that it might criminalise parents or therapists or medical professionals who disagree that a child may be trans? Gudrun on X says, no, they're not. This should be the last on the list of priorities for the British people. You know what, Gudrun? I suspect it is actually last on the list of priorities for the British people. But unfortunately, we have a group of politicians who seem to hold it very dear to their hearts. Jasmine on X says, Labour will say whatever they think will get them votes. That is a fact. What they will actually do is an entirely different thing. Yeah, again, I'm not sure this gets you votes. We saw what happened with the SNP, didn't we, in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon and all of that. It's one of the other things that baffles me about this. Your verdict is now in there. 41% of you think that Labour are right to pledge a ban on trans conversion therapy. 59% of you say that Labour are not right. And look, Ollie London alluded to right at the end there. Does it not seem as though there is an extraordinarily large number of young people growing up now genuinely thinking that they are born in the wrong body? And is that because people have always felt that way? Or is it because something a little bit odd is happening and things might be being forced upon them? I know which side of the fence I'm on. Coming up, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been freed after more than 5 years in HMP Belmarsh. Is this a victory for free speech, or actually, is he a bit of a wrong-un? This divides opinion. His former lawyer, Geoffrey Robertson Casey, is live to react to that huge news shortly. But first, Nigel Farage demands a no-nonsense approach to France and small boats.
They literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous.
He says no money to the French until they stop the boats. A former Labour MP and MEP, Sean Simon, is live, and he's next.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GBNews. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. It will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. 1 or 2 heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night, lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in Western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect, though, much of England and Wales just dry and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today, and across England and Wales again, mid-20s, maybe up to 31 in the capital. We are going to see a change, though, as low pressure comes in. You can see this swirl here, bringing a band of cloud and patchy rain across the country, followed by plenty of showers. That is a cold front, and so it will introduce cooler conditions. One more very warm day across the southeast on Thursday, but turning fresher for all by Friday.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true, that. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Still to come, on the historic day, Julian Assange is finally freed. His former lawyer, Geoffrey Robertson KC, joins me live to offer his expert insight. But first, Nigel Farage has called for Britain to stop further funding to France until they stop escorting boats full of illegal migrants across the Channel and to the UK. Here he is speaking to GB News live from the Channel shortly before he won the Trick Award for Best Presenter.
Behind me, you can see a white dinghy. There are 45 people on board. Behind it, you can see an escort vessel, because that's what the French do. Despite the 500 million quid we've given them, they literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous. But the significance of this boat is that this number on this vessel take it beyond 50,000 that have come since Rishi Sunak has been Prime Minister.
It's quite stark, isn't it? And the Reform UK leader has a simple solution. As I've said, cut funding to the French. He told reporters, we've got to say to the French that this is a completely unacceptable practice. You are literally aiding and abetting criminal gangs and certainly no more money. Why have we given them the money? How has this Conservative government been so bad at negotiating? Well, France refuses to stop the boats once they are out of shallow waters, insisting that it would breach maritime law to intervene and would also put migrants' lives at risk, often because they refuse help or threaten violence. Well, I now welcome former Labour MP and MEP Sean Simon. Sean, look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. So, right then, no more money to France, says Nigel. What say you?
Well, I say I'm not at all surprised that Nigel has decided to make the French the enemy and the problem when it comes to the small boats. But it's actually not the French, is it? It's not the French. It's not the Europeans. It's a global problem, and it's being done to those migrants and to us by very, very serious, very nasty organised crime, but the worst kind of international criminals. Those are the actual problem.
I mean, that is, look, undeniably, yeah, sure. Look, I mean, undeniably, criminal gangs are aiding and abetting the transfer of human cargo right the way through Europe.
Why doesn't Nigel do a photo? Why doesn't Nigel do a photo op about criminal gangs instead of about the French government? The problem is not that the French government are going behind these people in boats, escorting them.
To be fair, Sean, I really do think that is a bit of the problem, because we've given them at least 500 million quid. We exposed here at GB News that some of that money went to putting a fence around a football stadium that was nearby so that the migrants didn't damage their football stadium. They're taking police off the beach so that they can go and police the Olympics. We also unearthed footage of them just filming as women with children, actually, on the rare occasion, of course, these boats are not chock-a-block full of, young men, wading out into the Channel and waving them off. So when it comes to actual value for taxpayers' money, we are not getting it, are we, Sean?
Well, no, of course we're not. So it depends what you're saying. If you're saying the Tories, yet again, have done a disastrously bad deal, they have wasted a vast amount of money on a bad deal with the French that needs to be renegotiated, then I would say, Yes, absolutely. Of course, if there is a deal to be done, the Tories will have done a terrible one, for sure. And that's why the Labour manifesto says very clearly, we'll renegotiate our deals with the French. But
Does it tell us how they're going to do that? Just out of interest, Sean.
It's all that, like, you know, take all the money back from the French. Is that going to stop the boats? No, of course it's not. It's not going to make any difference. It's just going to make it worse.
OK, I suppose what Nigel would say, though, is that it would save us, you know, hundreds of millions of pounds as well. Can I just clarify something, Sean, if that's all right? Do you actually see anything wrong with a load of young men who we don't necessarily know who they are or where they're from actually breaking into Britain on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to see that any more than anybody else.
Can I just ask, do you not want to see that because you actually think that's a bad thing for Britain, or because you feel sorry for people making that journey across the Channel?
Absolutely both. Absolutely both. It is that our borders should be respected. There is a proper way to enter this country, and there are certain people, actually the vast majority of people in the world, who are not allowed to enter this country unless they're on holiday. And that's the way that it should be. And that's why what we should be doing is what Labour is saying that we should be doing, investing money in what they're talking about, 1,000 new hardcore police officers, intelligence officers, new, not giving money to the French government, but relationships with European intelligence and police agencies to really crack down on, like, they're the worst organised criminals in the world. These are the nastiest people around. Let's get at them.
Yeah, fine, absolutely, yeah. But is there not a slight flaw with what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party is saying, which is the assumption is that the full might of every single other European country to this point has been unable or unwilling to smash the gangs, but Sir Keir Starmer on July the 5th will be able to? And what's that based on?
So I think that is to use your phrase, it is a slight. I don't know if it's not so much a flaw, but it's the weakness in the argument.
Yeah,
and it's also the massive weakness in the Nigel Farage argument, which is that this isn't just a simple problem that by a gimmick on a boat you can fix, and let's get all the money back off the French. And I think Nigel even said, send in the Royal Marines. I mean, grow up, Nigel, and don't use the Royal Marines for your silly political stunts.
All right,
actually,
fine.
This is a really serious global problem.
It is, but we have just established, haven't we, between the... yeah, absolutely, and I'm fine with that. I understand that, and yes, I do think it is a bit simplistic to say send in the Royal Marines. I mean, the Royal Marines might not actually do it, right? So there is that side of it. But we have just established between the two of us, have we not, that the fatal flaw with Sir Keir Starmer's and the Labour Party's plan about smashing the gangs is that he might not be able to smash the gangs.
I never said it was a fatal flaw. What I said is that I think if we're having a sensible, grown-up discussion about it, I think you're right. And I think if you talk to Keir Starmer, he would admit also that you're right, that this is not an easy problem, that Labour is just going to easily, simply fix overnight, that nobody else has been able to fix. It is a difficult problem all over the world, and it would be difficult for Labour to fix, but they have to do a better job than the Tories, and frankly, they'll do a better job than Nigel on his boat talking nonsense.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, look, Nigel would say that he'd turn the boats back, and I have put this to reform. Which is, who are you going to get to actually turn the boats back, all right? And, you know, there is that side of it again. And there are flaws in everybody's plan. I do wonder, though, whether or not having the likes of Yvette Cooper there with a sign saying refugees welcome and simultaneously removing what little deterrent the Rwanda plan actually might have been, it is going to make a blind bit of difference. But we will, as the polls stand, we will find out, won't we? Sean, thank you very much. I'll just say it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Much appreciated. And I'm sorry that we've run out of time, though. It's Sean Simon there, who is a former Labour MP and an MEP. Right, OK, coming up. Remember this, Sir Keir Starmer pledge?
We will restore serious government to our borders, tackle this problem at source, and replace the Rwanda policy permanently.
Well, yes, as you were hearing there, the migrants in Calais say that apparently they're waiting for a Labour government before they cross the channel. Yeah, they've got it all, this lot, aren't they? You know, brain surgeons, accountants, politically aware. So will Starmer turn Britain into the migrant capital of the world? Plus, what happens next here? Yeah, it's a good one, that. But first, Julian Assange has been freed after more than 5 years in a British prison. Is it a victory for free speech? And what next for the WikiLeaks founder after his 12-year legal fight? We'll be talking about that very shortly. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So, question is, what can we do to get young people to eat healthy food? Here's dietitian and nutrition consultant Helen Bond. Helen, what do you think?
Eating habits formed at this age tend to persist into later life. We know we're eating too much fat, sugar, salt, and not enough of the good things like fibre, you know, fruits and vegetables, all of those things. So yes, we need to help this age group so they have the skill set and they have the nutrition knowledge to take that forward.
Do you agree that it is impossible to eat healthily on a budget and quickly as well, or do you have any sort of fail-safe, affordable and very quick to prep meals that you'd recommend youngsters try?
It doesn't have to be expensive either, but you have to have those kind of cost-cutting hacks and those time-saving things in the kitchen. You know, make use, I always say, of things like peas, beans and lentils, which are a type of pulse, very inexpensive compared to meat, and yet they double up as one of your 5 a day, and also a great source of plant-based protein. You know, if you overget a milk as something, you have too much milk, maybe make some lattes.
I just wanted to throw a shoe at the TV, really, because was there nothing else on or nothing else available? The point being, there is an audience, there's obviously an appeal, there's obviously people are watching this stuff. So what are they doing? Are they watching and not cooking?
I think that's it. They're watching and maybe enjoying all the cookery programs like I do. And I'm a typical person in the kitchen. I must have about 100 cookbooks. But sometimes when you are time poor, you know, you've got to feed a family or you've got to feed yourself and everything, you don't really know where to start. And I think that's why apps and having things online for this younger audience makes it much more accessible. Start with one recipe and build it up from there. Like I said,
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, will a Labour government open the immigration floodgates more than they already are? But first, Julian Assange has today been released from prison after reaching a plea deal with the US authorities, which will see him plead guilty to one charge under the Espionage Act, but allow him to return to his native Australia. The WikiLeaks founder was wanted on 18 espionage charges after thousands of classified military and diplomatic documents were published between 2010 and 2011 in one of the biggest data leaks in American history. Assange has been in Belmarsh jail in London for a total of 1,901 days, but hey, who's counting, after he was expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy in 2019, where he lived for 7 years to avoid extradition to Sweden on rape charges. In June 2022, the then Home Secretary Priti Patel approved his extradition to the US, but he had been fighting that decision, with the High Court granting him permission to mount a fresh appeal in May this year. But earlier today, Assange left Belmarsh, boarded a flight to Northern Mariana Islands in the Western Pacific, where he's expected to plead guilty to a single charge before being allowed to travel to Australia. So there we go. Well, I'm going to whiz us back over to my panel now because, unfortunately, Julian Assange's former lawyer has pulled out at the last minute, which, dare I say it, it's probably a joke in there somewhere about maybe that's why he spent so long in prison. But journalist and author Harriet Assange and political correspondent for The Spectator James Heal and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. What do we feel about Julian Assange? Is he a hero or a villain, do you think, Harriet?
I think he's a villain. I mean, I listened to the BBC Radio 4 today, 3 different news segments gushing over Julian Assange. Not one mention is the fact that he was done for rape and for sexual assault and that he fled into the embassy to escape being extradited to Sweden to face those charges. That's not, to me, a heroic man. And the other thing is that he's, you know, it's always presented he's a journalist, but he only gave away Western secrets. I mean, if you're a journalist, you're meant to do both sides. I mean, we never saw Russian secrets or Chinese or Iranian secrets. It was only just Western secrets.
Well, I suppose, James, the argument might be, you know, he exposed some really quite horrific things that were happening that our military or the American military was a part of, and maybe we had a right to know about that stuff.
I think, though, any defence has to be tempered with the fact that the way in which he went about it was certainly cavalier, if not deeply irresponsible. There were names of people low down in food chains, you know, involved in networks across the world who didn't have any kind of protections, and their names were just put out there, and damn the consequences that happened to them. And not least, of course, what Harriet says subsequently with the you know, sexual charges that were levelled against him and what happened as a result of that. So I think that it's you know, it's too soon to say. No, you can't possibly say he's a hero, I would say. And I think that a lot of the fawning today seems a little bit overplaced.
I suppose another aspect of this is, all right, let's just say you do think he's an absolute wrong. Has he served his time, though? You know, a heck of a long time in an Ecuadorian embassy, which can't have been that nice, and then, you know, quite a long time in Belmarsh, and he has got to plead guilty to something on an American territory as well. I mean, is that actually the length of time you would expect him to serve for the crimes that he's allegedly committed? Yeah,
actually, it is. I think that the plea deal that the Americans have come up with is a sensible way of closing this complete chapter. And I agree with Harriet and James that he's not a journalist. Journalists don't behave that way. You don't dump millions of documents on the internet without checking them, without knowing what the consequences might be for other people. He put lives at risk by doing it. And those people who talk about how he's a great sort of champion for freedom of expression. No, he's not. Freedom of expression carries with it a responsibility, and he decided to abdicate that responsibility by doing what he did. So he's not a journalist, he's not a freedom fighter, but I think that it's time anyway to close a chapter on this.
Time to close a chapter. Again, you know, there is a compelling argument that if it wasn't for people like Julian Assange, Harriet, then things could happen, you know, all over the world that we wouldn't know about, and we might have cover-ups, and we do have cover-ups. We know we've got cover-ups. So, you know, is he not actually performing a service there in a sense?
No, I think what you said was absolutely right. I mean, if you're a journalist, you're meant to check that you're not actually harming the people you're writing about. Yes, exposing is one thing, but actually putting them in physical harm is something different, and that's what he did. And then he did it to not to sort of big, powerful people. I mean, that's the brave thing, is those journalists who take on big, powerful people. He did it to small people who couldn't fight back and had no protection.
And I think he wanted the privileges of being a journalist without the responsibilities, and that was his great abdication and moral failing.
OK, all right. We will draw a line under that there for now. Coming up, I will be sitting down with former Environment Secretary George Eustice, but next, as migrants in Calais say that they are waiting for a Labour government before they cross the Channel because Starmer pledged to scrap the Rwanda plan, are the immigration floodgates about to be opened? It is interesting, isn't it? I have spoken to illegal migrants here who tell me that they were very scared of Rwanda. If that goes, then that is the problem. They are also, as again we exposed here on GB News, being fast-tracked across the continent to Calais now. Why? Because, shock horror, our European continental friends have just voted to have stricter laws when it comes to deporting people. So Britain, under Keir Starmer, conceivably could well be an outlier. Do you think that Labour would open the floodgates to an illegal migrant invasion? It's Patrick Christys tonight. We are on GB News. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. it will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. 1 or 2 heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night, lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect that much of England and Wales just dry and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today, and across England and Wales again, mid-20s, maybe up to 31 in the capital. We are going to see a change, though, as low pressure comes in. You can see this swirl here, bringing a band of cloud and patchy rain across the country, followed by plenty of showers. That is a cold front, and so it will introduce cooler conditions. One more very warm day across the southeast on Thursday, but turning fresher for all by Friday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
they literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous.
Should we stop sending money to the French until they start stopping the boats? And
UK becomes a net recipient of illegal migrants. We estimate about 100,000 additional.
Oh, this is just invented. This is just fantasy.
Well, the Tories and Labour go to war on illegal immigration. Are they two cheeks of the same backside? Plus, the betting scandal has just taken a new twist. Now Labour are caught up in it. Plus, a postman has been caught writing the word racist on reform leaflets. Should he be sacked? And winner, winner, chicken dinner.
GB News Breakfast. Nigel Farage.
Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
Absolutely. Next year, hopefully, I might win one of those or indeed be nominated. Anyway, on my panel tonight, it's journalist Harriet Sargent, political guru at The Spectator, James Hill, and columnist at The Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Oh, and can you tell me, now, blinking you missed it with this one, by the way, but can you tell me what happens next here? OK, all right. Well, should we stop paying the French until they stop the boats? That's what I'll be talking about next.
The news at just after 10 o'clock. 4 men have been arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass at the Prime Minister's constituency home in Yorkshire. Police said officers were there with the 4 men within a minute of them entering the grounds. The men, who are aged between 20 and 52, remain in police custody for questioning. In other news today, Labour is pledging to halve knife crime within a decade, it says, if it wins the general election. The party's plan includes creating a new cross-government coalition to work on solutions, as well as community hubs involving youth workers and careers advisors. Sir Keir Starmer says cracking down on knife crime is his personal moral mission.
I was the chief prosecutor for 5 years, and therefore I prosecuted many cases involving the use of knives, and I've made it my personal mission to deal with this. It is a moral mission as far as I'm concerned. It isn't a question of urban versus rural. In fact, I think there's more knife crime, sadly, in rural areas, or at least it's going up more quickly. And I think it's not fair on the families we've been hearing from this morning to simply point the finger to somebody else.
Sir Keir Starmer. Now, the King's new family order has been worn for the first time this evening by Her Majesty the Queen at the Japanese state banquet at Buckingham Palace. Queen Camilla stepped out wearing the miniature portrait of her husband on a pale blue bow for the event at the Buckingham Palace ballroom. The unveiling of the new King Charles III family order comes nearly 2 years after he acceded as monarch following the death of his mother. Pretty hot outside today. A yellow health alert, in fact, was put in place as temperatures soared across the country. London was the hottest part of the UK, with temperatures recorded above 30 degrees. Meanwhile, it was 24 in Manchester, 26 in Cardiff, many thousands more soaking up the sun on the beach. But is that the end of the summer already? Forecasters are warning us the hot spell won't last long, with showers and possibly thunderstorms predicted for tomorrow. Brolly's out. Now, the first samples ever collected from the dark side of the moon have arrived on Earth. China became the first country to excavate the lunar dust, successfully bringing it back to Earth earlier on today. The re-entry capsule of the Chang'e 6 probe touched down on the northern Chinese region of Inner Mongolia. Its cargo of lunar soil was collected earlier in June before embarking on a journey through space. It'll now be analysed by scientists as part of China's ambitious space programme. And as if you didn't know, England have drawn 0-0 with Slovenia in their European Championship Group C game in Cologne tonight. Managers Gareth Southgate brought on Cole, Palmer, Alexander-Arnold and Anthony Gordon off the bench at different times, but it wasn't enough to win the group. Slovenia also progressed as a third-place team and were cheering at the end of the match. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, illegal migrants in France cannot wait for a Labour government. That's according to reports in The Telegraph after their reporters spoke to some migrants near Dunkirk who said they would not take the risk of crossing the channel in small boats until they knew there was a new government. This is likely the knock-on effect from Sir Keir Starmer pledging this on Rwanda.
We will restore serious government to our borders, tackle this problem at source and replace the Rwanda policy permanently.
I think the problem is for many people now the source is the migrant hotel next to where they live. But Rishi Sunak claimed last night that migrants will be queuing up in Calais if Labour win power.
Either you believe illegal migrants should not be in our country, they should be removed to somewhere else, or with Keir Starmer, they're all going to be released, all the people we've detained, and they will be out on the streets. And that's a choice for everyone. Do you want illegal migrants on planes going elsewhere, or do you want illegal migrants out on your streets with Labour? Those illegal migrants will not be on planes to Rwanda. They will be out on our streets putting pressure on public services. And, by the way, I can tell you now, they are queuing up in Calais waiting for a Starmer government so they can come here and stay here.
They've not been on planes already, though, have they? And that's a problem for him. But is that a bit rich coming from him? Because Nigel Farage went out to the Channel today to mark a bleak migrant milestone for the Prime Minister.
Behind me, you can see a white dinghy. There are 45 people on board. Behind it, you can see an escort vessel, because that's what the French do. Despite the 500 million quid we've given them, they literally, once these boats are afloat, escort them to our 12-mile line where they hand them over to Border Force. That of itself, I think, is outrageous. But the significance of this boat is that this number on this vessel take it beyond 50,000 that have come since Rishi Sunak has been Prime Minister.
If you look very closely behind Nigel there, you could see a giant red carpet just laid out across the Channel leading to British soil. But Home Secretary James Cleverly then clashed with his counterpart Yvette Cooper on LBC earlier after Labour's Shadow Home Secretary suggested they might use the Dublin Agreement, do you remember that, to send migrants back to the EU country that they originated from.
We used to have the Dublin Agreement, which did have some returns to Europe,
and we were a net
did
recipient.
Also mean that we would
no,
give
Yvette, come
for
on.
For young
Nick, come
people.
on. We were a net recipient. The arrangement that you're talking about will inevitably mean the UK becomes a net recipient of illegal migrants. We estimate about 100,000 additional.
No, this is just
people.
invented. This
But
is
the
just
point-
fantasy.
but the point
This is just total garbage. No, I mean
Let him finish
seriously.
his point. Hang on.
No, he shouldn't be allowed to just, basically make stuff up or tell lies. I mean, that is just not on.
It's interesting that, though, isn't it? Because they both lied there. But anyway, for what it's worth, this is Davy's plan to stop the boats.
First of all, a lot of people coming on the small boats are coming because there have been criminal gangs trafficking them. And the UK, under the Conservatives, has been hopeless in tackling that crime. And we're saying that we want to work with our European partners and with other countries to tackle those criminal gangs.
And work towards rejoining the European Union. Well, here's what Sir Keir Starmer's tough talk on the migrant crisis looks and sounds like.
And nobody but nobody should be making that journey across the Channel. Nobody. It's a breach of our borders. It's also, I think, a matter of national security, because the government should be deciding who comes to this country, and we need to know who it is that's coming to this country. So we have to deal with it. I take it very seriously. I do not accept that it's impossible to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. And that's why, in the first few days of government, if we're privileged to come in to serve, we will set up a border security command.
So the government should decide who comes into this country and presumably who leaves, unless the government decides that it wants to deport criminals, in which case, dare I say it, someone like Keir Starmer might sign a letter saying that they should stay. Yeah. All right, OK, you buying any of that? Or would Labour make Britain the asylum capital of the world? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I've got journalist and author Harriet Sargent, political correspondent for The Spectator is James Hill, and GB News' senior political commentator and columnist at the Sunday Mirror, it's Nigel Nelson. Harriet, well, we just heard a procession of different politicians lie to us there over and over again. We did, for what it's worth, see Nigel Farage actually in the middle of the Channel looking at some very real boats. Who do you think cares the most?
Well, Nigel Farage. I mean, I've been following this for many years, this whole migration thing, and it's just repetitive. We have the same thing over and over again. Politicians saying, we've had the Conservatives after 5 different elections saying they're going to control migration, and it has gone up and up and up. I don't think Keir Starmer's going to do it. I don't think his plans... He emphasises border force. I spent some months with Border Force, and it's not the Border Force that's the problem. It's not them that need beefing up. They can stop the asylum seekers, but it's what happens to the asylum seekers afterwards. I mean, they stop them, but then all they do is send them into the process of the asylum system.
Is that not the
and then they stay?
Yeah, is that not one of the flaws with what Rishi Sunak was saying there, James, which is that under a Labour government, they're going to let all this lot out on the street. They're queuing up and they're waiting to come. You will not see anyone on a plane be deported. I mean, we're hardly deporting anyone now. We've hardly deported anyone for the last few years.
Yeah, and 1 in 5 hotel rooms, I believe, last year in the UK was occupied by a migrant. Illegal migrant, and so as a result of this, it's placing huge pressures on sort of local economies across the country. Obviously, it's huge issues for community tensions as well. And I think that other than Rwanda, there's very little in kind of the way of substance which differs from the two main parties on this. I think there's much more deeper substantial issues here. Part of it is about kind of solving the migrant crisis at root. Part of it's looking at international treaties as well. But I do think the danger is that Labour is far too relaxed about this, and I hope it sort of go away. As it talks about when we talk about budgetary pressures on things like the NHS, we talked about earlier in this programme, every pound that goes on housing people here doesn't go on sort of fixing the NHS, and it's going to be something that undermines governments for years to come.
Yeah, people are absolutely sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone today, just a normal person out there on the street, who had come from Iran and had said to me that they are absolutely sick of paying tax for people who've come here illegally to live. Nigel, a couple of flaws with the Labour Party's plans on this appear to be Sir Keir Starmer saying that just by virtue of having him in Downing Street, we'll be able to smash the gangs in a way that the full might of our European friends have so far been unable to do, which I don't quite understand how he's figured that one out. And Yvette Cooper saying she's going to use the Dublin Agreement, which I think would result in us being a net recipient, no?
Well, the Dublin Agreement, what she's actually talking about is the idea that we try and do the deal with European countries that we once had with the EU, which means that you can actually return people to Europe. James Cleverly's figure of that means we'll take 100,000 migrants is just a complete nonsense. It's based on a European Council decision last year on population of European countries to share migrants out. We're not in Europe. We won't be part of that deal. It's not going to happen. When it comes down to dealing with the smuggling gangs, at least Keir Starmer has got a stronger way of doing it by using anti-terror laws and MI5 to try and smash them.
But would that mean, sorry, just so we're clear on this, do you... I mean, we'll have to wait and see. None of us are entirely clear at the moment, so that's fair enough. But is your interpretation of what he said is that he's going to send MI5 out to assassinate the gangs?
No, I don't think. I think we gave up our licence to kill sort of quite some time ago. Right. So no, the idea is to use the same sort of tactics you would use against terrorists to go after the gangs. The point at the end of this is you won't stop the boats entirely. What that might do is reduce the number coming over. But until we get a system whereby asylum seekers can claim asylum offshore. Right. At the moment, they can only claim asylum on British soil. That is the draw.
Should we not just assassinate the gangs?
Well, I mean, the gangs aren't hanging around in the UK waiting to be assassinated. They're spread all over the place. You know, there's some in Albania. I mean, it's in an big international business. So how Keir Starmer thinks he's going to track these gangs down in Albania or wherever they have, or in Iraq or wherever they are, and then put a stop to them is just magical.
Well, through Europol, basically, is the answer. I mean,
Europol already exists, Nigel.
It does, but we're not a member of it. We lost our membership. Yeah, but we lost our membership with Brexit. So one of the ideas, this may not work, by the way, but one of the plans will be is to get us back there so we can embed officers in Europol, which we can't at the moment.
But Europol isn't working. This migrant crisis is right across Europe. Yeah. Europol is looking at Europe, and they're not smashing the gangs in Europe.
Doing that.
So what? Why are we?
And Nigel, you said about trying to stop the boats from crossing in the first place. I think the key thing is deterrence, and that's what the former head of the UK Border Force said yesterday, is that a deterrent is necessary. Now, I think Rwanda is a very flawed scheme. I think there's lots of question marks over it, but that is a deterrent of some kind.
Yeah.
If you look at what some of the
it's an imaginary deterrent. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence that Rwanda will act as a deterrent. Now, I can't say that it won't because it's not actually in existence, but certainly with the money we're spending on it, you could keep an asylum seeker in a hotel for 25 years for the money each one will cost to go to Rwanda.
Crucially, we are now dealing with two major parties. One's with an imaginary deterrent, and one is with an imaginary solution to smash the gangs. And that is where we are as a nation.
And
so
we should look
strap in, Britain. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, look at Australia, because they did stop it. and what they did.
Yeah, but Australia had first of all, Australia turned back the boats, but they did it in international waters. There are no international waters between Calais and Dover. They also had an agreement with Indonesia to send people back. We have no agreements yet. That's been the problem that we're facing.
We are going to have to draw a line under this one, I'm afraid, although I imagine we'll probably end up talking about it at some point here. Coming up, what happens next between this unsuspecting tourist and the King's horse? Oh, yes. Find out more later in the show. But first, Rishi Sunak has finally suspended 2 candidates caught up in the Tory election betting scandal. Is it a bit too little too late? And now Labour are involved. Do you think the whole story might go away? Former Environment Secretary George Eustice is live in the studio in 3 short minutes. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So, should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. Right. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are heading your way very, very soon. But first, after days of political pressure, Rishi Sunak withdrew support this afternoon from Laura Saunders and Craig Williams, the 2 Tory candidates suspected of betting on the general election day. Both candidates will still appear on ballot papers under Conservative banners, though, as Sunak's decision came only after ballots had been printed. It came on the same day that Keir Starmer's party was implicated in the betting scandal, with Keir Starmer suspending its parliamentary candidate Kevin Craig after being told that the Gambling Commission has also launched an investigation into him, reportedly over a bet that he'd lose his own seat. Well, I'm joined now by former Conservative Minister George Eustice. George, look, thank you very much. I do have to put it to you, Partygate, dodgy PPE, gambling. I mean, is the Tory party just all a bit dodgy?
Well, I think there's a time when basically if you're on the ropes and things are going against you, sometimes the media narrative turns against you, and things that might have been a storm, but then a storm that passes, end up being a storm that lingers. And I think that's what the Conservative Party's been dogged with in this election. There have been, mistakes that have been made. If you were in a better state and, people gave you the benefit of the doubt, things would move on. But we found on a number of things, including this one, the story hasn't moved on. So the Prime Minister, I think, done the right thing now, but it's difficult. I actually, in these sorts of situations, and I always actually supported Boris Johnson as well in these sorts of situations. If there's something to be said for not just going for people just because the media are baying for blood. And I think he was right to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's an election. The storm wasn't going away, so he's had to act.
Have you ever put a bet on something political?
I haven't, actually, no. Perhaps I should have done, I don't know. But perhaps not, now seeing how this has gone. I actually think it's probably just not a good idea if anybody's too close to politics. They might not have insider information, but they've probably got a sense of which way things are going. It's probably just not a good thing to do. Apart from anything else, if an election's going to be called, you want people to be thinking, how are we going to win this election? How are we going to stop Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister? You don't really want them thinking, right, let's get down the bookies and put a bet on it.
It is part of the problem with the Conservatives that so many of them, and I believe you are included in this, have decided to throw the towel in?
Well, look, I'd done 25 years in politics. I first stood as a candidate for UKIP way back in 1999 and was then an advisor to David Cameron and, Michael Howard before that, before doing 15 years in Parliament. So I just wanted to change, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. You saw the same in 2010. Lots and lots of Labour MPs stood down in 2010. The days of people wanting to be an MP till the very end, I think are gone. People now do that.
Do you not think there's a sense of duty, though? I mean, I do speak privately to a couple of Tory MPs who are pretty certain they're going to lose their seat, but they've said to me that they don't believe in handing over a loss and they don't think it's morally the right thing to do.
Well, look, people have got, different motivations. For me, I wanted a chance to do something different, and it wasn't really, that you would lose a seat. It's much more, if you wanted to do a change, I'll be 53 at the next election. I wanted to do something different. I wasn't. It's a job you've got to do at 110% full tilt, and if you don't feel you want to do that and you want to change, you should make that decision.
What's been the worst thing about this general election campaign for the Conservative Party? I mean, is it Rishi Sunak himself or the people who are advising him? He was stood outside in the rain. There was the D-Day issue. I mean, anyone with half a sense of political nous doesn't leave D-Day early. He's got massively bogged down in this gambling scandal as well. He keeps telling us all that he'll do whatever it takes to stop the boats without doing whatever it takes to stop the boats. I mean, is the problem him or the people around him?
Well, I think if I'm honest, I think when you go into an election, as the Conservative Party is, on the ropes, 20 points behind in the polls, it was a chance that they took that basically doing a surprise election was either going to change the terms of trade, shake things up, maybe lead to more scrutiny going on to the Labour Party, or it wouldn't. And as it turns out, so far it hasn't. What's happened is they've taken this risk going for an early election and things haven't really come their way in the way that they hoped. I think the really big problem is, we go into this so far behind that the media and the pollsters almost seem to have made their mind up that it's a foregone conclusion. And it's very hard to get a spring in your step when that's the context in which you go into an election.
Nigel Farage, some might say, and history may well prove, did hammer another nail into the coffin. We have to wait and see, obviously. But he's out there in the Channel today. He says he wants to turn the boats back. He's identified a key issue there, according to quite a few polls now, has been that inflection point is there or thereabouts, isn't it? I mean, do you guys wish that you just turn the boats back, do you think? Early doors? If Jabba had turned that first boat back, we wouldn't be here now, would we?
Well, look, I think the point is, I mean, the best thing I've seen actually done is is when the French police actually started puncturing the dinghies before they took off, because that's the right thing to do, actually. If you want to try and safeguard lives, then before they even set sail, you should be, slashing those dinghies so that people can't get in them in the first place. And that was done in some instances. I think we need to see more of that sort of action. But, Nigel Farage's got this idea that the Royal Marines should take these boats and take them back to French shores. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why that can't work. You'd be then invading French territory. What happens if France decides to load them on boats and take them to the UK shore? What are we going to do about that? It's a classic, simplistic Nigel Farage solution. The truth is, and this is where you have a problem, I think, with Keir Starmer as well, everything that Keir Starmer talks about has been done to death, tried and tried and tried many times over and over again in the last few years. This is a massive, massive challenge. We've gone to this position now of getting the Rwanda bill in place so that we can actually use that as a deterrent. Some say it won't work, some say it will work. The only way to find out is to try it. And that's why Keir Starmer is so stupid to say that he's going to abandon that.
What is the actual reason to vote for the Conservatives other than they are not Labour?
Basically, I think Rishi Sunak has done a fantastic job of stabilising and steadying the ship, particularly on the economy. We've now got inflation back down to 2%. He's demonstrated that he can manage the economy well. And, with the public finances, it's a challenging environment globally for every government. And as you look ahead in the next few years, you need a government that's going to be good with the finances. And that means Rishi Sunak.
OK, all right. There are issues as well when it comes to the NHS. We spoke a little bit about that earlier on, missed waiting list as well, and missed targets, I should say. Has Rishi Sunak got any proper solution to that, do you think?
Well, we put huge extra investment into the NHS. I mean, spending on the NHS has almost doubled since 2010. And the really big challenge that every government faces for the NHS is, as medicine advances, as people live longer, pressures and demands on the NHS grow and tend to grow faster than the amount of money that you can put into it. It's a really big challenge. But
is that not, with respect, partly down to immigration, and that is because we've seen record upon record level of immigration under the Conservatives?
Well, it's partly due to that growing population, although obviously some of the migrants that have come here to work are also contributing. They're paying their taxes like everybody else. It's only the asylum seekers is a relatively small amount of the total immigration figure. And people tend also to need NHS support later in life. So it's more a product of an ageing population than it is of migration.
If you're being brutally honest, what would you score the Conservatives out of 10 for the last couple of years?
Well, I'd actually give them 8. But, I shall vote Conservative. I'm a former Conservative MP, and I've been a Conservative supporter for 25 years. I would love it if the country at large gave us an 8, because that means we would be back in government, and I think that's right for the country. But obviously, we go into this election in a very difficult context.
All right, look, George, thank you very much. Do appreciate having you on the show, and I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. That is George Eustace there. Right, OK, well, look, stay tuned, because coming up, we expose the Royal Mail postman who's been caught writing abuse on the official election leaflets. But next, I'll bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. My panel, they're ready to go, so stay tuned.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. It will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. 1 or 2 heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night. Lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in Western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect that much of England and Wales just dry. and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today. And across England and Wales, again, mid-20s, maybe up to 31 in the capital. We are going to see a change, though, as low pressure comes in. You can see the swirl here, bringing a band of cloud and patchy rain across the country, followed by plenty of showers. That is a cold front, and so it will introduce cooler conditions. One more very warm day across the southeast on Thursday, but turning fresher for all by Friday.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight Now. It's time to bring you tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my wonderful panel. Let's do it. So, I've got the Metro. Freed Assange is owing home. 400k bill for jets as saga ends. This is the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, faces repaying Australia's government nearly 400 grand for private jets. After he basically flew out of here, didn't he? Let's go to the Telegraph now. Cabinet Minister claimed that he won £2,000 on election bet. Scottish Secretary tried to dismiss remark as a joke. As a fifth figure is now embroiled in the scandal. Cabinet Minister claimed that he won £2,100 betting on the day of the general election. Now he says that is a joke. That's Alistair Jack. I said to have made the comments to the BBC shortly after Rishi Sunak called the snap poll last month. The NHS also warns of chaos as the heatwave hits during strike action. Great. The Daily Mail. Lacklustre Lions, another bore draw, but at least England top the group and avoid the Germans. Yeah, fine, but we have just drawn 0-0 with a country in the shape of Slovenia, who I believe have a population of 2.1 million people. Quite a few of them were in the stadium watching. 11 of them were on the pitch. And, it's just remarkable, isn't it? Absolutely remarkable. Anyway, Starmer, Mail readers were right about Labour in 2019. That's why we've changed. That's their other story. Let's go to the Times. Labour, man suspended for betting on election. Party acts as Tory minister says he won £2,100. I do think, by the way, when this chap, Alistair Jack, I don't think all is quite as it seems with this, because I think he did actually put the bet on quite a long time ago, I think, didn't he?
He's just come out in the last 10 minutes and said that he put £20 in April on a July election. Yeah. He didn't realise it would actually happen at that point. He didn't have inside information. It was just a guess. He put it on.
I actually don't think there's any indication that Rishi Sunak knew in April that we were going to get a July the 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the key question about, is it inside information or is it just an educated guess or not?
No. Yeah, there is a world of difference between that and someone putting on money the day before the election was called. And I actually do feel a little bit sorry for him. He's been caught up in all of this. But anyway, there we go. Let's go to The Guardian quickly. Fifth Tory face investigation. Yeah, all right, it's the same stuff, isn't it? There we go, fine. Let's just focus a little bit, actually, because I'm sick of it. I want to focus a bit on the football. Yeah. And just say, James, we're rubbish.
Well, it's funny. I was just sat out there in the green room and I saw the front back page of today's Sun, in which Declan Rice promised we'd have fire in our bellies and we'd go into war. A 0-0 result against Slovenia, a country with a population the size of 7 London boroughs. I mean, it was pathetic tonight, honestly. And you have to say, who's going to be out of their job first, Rishi Sunak or Gareth Southgate?
Well, that's a bet I'd put on. That's a bet I'd put on. Nigel, what has gone wrong? We've got an embarrassment of riches with this England football team. You know, we're led by a bloke who, in my view, probably votes Lib Dem. Is that the problem?
I have absolutely no idea how Gareth Southgate votes, and I'm sure it wouldn't make any difference anyway. No, it's been really boring so far. It's been a bit of a disaster. We've just scraped through into the next round, but it is just scraping through.
For me, Harriet, there is a big... The national mood, right, is linked, I think, with how well the England national team is doing. You know, when we had the previous Euros and we had the World Cup, we had the World Cup before that, and it was like, whoa, you know, we're all topless in Trafalgar Square, 9 pints deep, or all right, that was just
flares everywhere.
But whatever, yeah, everywhere. But you know, now you look at this and you think the election's been boring and is dragging, okay, and I say that as somebody who has to report it every night. I'm sorry, but let's be honest, it is. And also, we're pants at the football.
Well, I don't think the election's been boring. I think it's been heartbreaking, deeply depressing. And it's bred a huge amount of cynicism. So I wish it had been boring. I think it's been much, much more troubling than that. And this football, which I have to say I don't know much about...
Well, you don't. To be fair, that's fine. You don't need to, because at the moment we've not been playing it, so it doesn't matter.
There you are. It's depressing and heartbreaking, like everything else.
Absolutely. All right. Well, look. Now let's whiz this on to something else, because Tom Bradby has said that there aren't many white male news anchors left. OK. I don't know anything you. He prepares to host ITV's election night coverage. In an interview with the Radio Times, the 57-year-old presenter said, I don't particularly... I'm not quite sure what he said, because that's not my decision. That will be someone else's decision. There aren't many white male anchors left, dare I say, so I feel a bit less nervous about that than possibly I should. But just put your head down, do a good job, and try to be as nice as you can to everyone around you. All right, are we about to see one less white male news anchor after that comment, do you think?
Well, I have a soft spot for... I want you to know that I have a soft spot for white males.
Thank you, Harry.
But, whatever they're doing...
That's great. Thank you. But it's just a bit odd, you know, the fact that he felt the need to say... I can understand why he said that, but... normally people don't come out and say that if they work for someone.
Surely it's the person who does the best job. I mean, why are we talking about whether you're white, pink, red striped or what? It's the person who does the best job.
Yeah, and it's a curious comment to make, given that on election night he's going to be with Ed Balls, George Osborne and Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah.
So you have an all-white panel there. Yeah. Over on BBC, Clive Murray will be presenting with Laura Koonsberg. Clive Murray gets it on talent anyway. He's absolutely superb at doing that. Krishnan Guru Murthy will be doing it on Channel 4, but that's alongside Emily Maitlis. It seems to me that there are plenty of white...
And Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell.
Yeah.
All I'd say is, I mean, there's a fair few white male anchors here, and GB News doesn't seem to do badly in the ratings. So, you know, I think let the best man win.
Yeah,
I just thought it was an interesting comment, actually, because, you know, you could argue that, oh, OK, maybe it's about... Reading between the lines, does he feel a bit of pressure from the old diversity hires? I wonder if that's what he's getting at.
I misheard it when I first said it. White male anchors, something else. I thought there's plenty of those still around.
There are. Yes, there's rather a lot of those. Now, some people believe there's such a thing as Nigel Farage derangement syndrome, OK, which makes lefties say and do irrational things. Step forward, broadcaster Narinder Kaur, who appears to have fallen into that rather bonkers trap. Yesterday, Narinder tweeted this picture of Nigel Farage giving a campaign speech with the caption, "Oh God, this actually sent shivers down my spine. Is it just me, or is this Hitler-esque?" If you're listening on radio, it's just Nigel waving to a crowd, actually. And as part of that natural progression of the arm, shall we say, from waving from one side to the other, and you all get what I'm trying to say here. Anyway, why do we always have to bring the Nazis into it?
Well, because it's their rather limited frame of historical reference, really, and they've got nothing else to compare it to. And, of course, a lot of these people live for clicks. They can't wait to get the social media hit from everyone retweeting it. So they therefore go for the most extreme thing and jump to the most offensive comparison. You know, sort of Hitler-esque. I'm not sure Mr. Hitler ever wore something like Nigel's colourful jacket.
No.
But, no, it's a ridiculous comparison,
I think it was
clearly.
Hugo Boss, actually, wasn't he?
More of a Hugo Boss man.
But Hugo Boss will probably care to forget that. But yeah, I do... Nigel, there is something, I think, such as Farage derangement syndrome that does appear to grip a lot of people on the left.
Because he's successful and because he appeals to the people that the left think they should have a monopoly on. So they get very upset by that.
I mean, no politician should ever use comparisons with the Nazis or with Hitler or anything like that. It always gets them into trouble. And the same thing applies to commentators. Don't make that comparison. Nigel Farage may be many things. I've known him for years. I don't agree with a word he says, but the last thing I would accuse him of is being Hitler-esque.
Yeah, there's almost absolute... Go on.
And he's certainly not a teetotal vegetarian.
No, that's true, that's true. All right, OK, well, that's out there now. Now, a female tourist visiting Whitehall learnt the hard way to never get too close to the King's Guard and their horse. I've been teasing you with this for a while now. Here it is. I hope she's all right, but I'll be honest with you, I could watch that all day. Let's play it again. So she gets close to the horse, and the horse says no, or nay, I suppose. The horse says nay, off you pop. Is it me? Or has she massively oversold that dive? I think she's taking a dive. That's a yellow card.
I think it's better than anything I've seen at the Euros. I mean, look at that.
Get her up front. Get her playing up front for England right now. Anyway, two men helped her up immediately, and hopefully she's doing OK. Coming up, we celebrate GB News' triple win at today's Trick Awards as I crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, I show you the political postman who was caught scrawling abuse on official election leaflets. I know we'll have some more Taurus newspaper front pages, so stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We're very lucky to have an heir to the throne who is dutiful, loves his family, and he still takes all the children to school in the morning. And you can't really hope for anything more than that, can you? And he's behaved with such dignity. He must be so worried about his father and his lovely wife.
I wonder what the royals are going to do if the next generation of people aren't armed forces, if they don't join the army or the navy or the air force or whatever.
This is very interesting because Prince William doesn't necessarily want little George to do that. He doesn't feel it's necessary. But it's such a stamp on the royal family, isn't it? And with all the costumes, and they're the head of the army. And so what would they do without that? I find that very difficult. I think it's the same with religion, actually, because he's not religious, William. He does go once or twice a year, but he hasn't got the same passion about religion that King Charles does. And I think it's very difficult. I think it'll be maybe a very changed royal family.
Indeed, yeah. We don't know yet who's going to be attending Royal Ascot, but we suspect at the very least the Queen, probably the King and Queen, and maybe even the Prince of Wales as well.
You can't keep the Queen away from horses. I mean, she absolutely loves them. She used to ride them non-stop when she was little. And fascinatingly, her mother never bothered about it because they weren't mobiles then, and she would go off riding for hours and sleep in a field.
What an incredible
childhood. And then come back the next day. She never worried about her. She thought she was sensible. She loves animals, dogs and horses. That's one of the things she had very much in common with the late Queen.
The People's Channel.
Daily Express. So it is. Farage, UK must end funding for France until small boats halted. We have spoken about this quite a bit already tonight. He basically, well, we all know the drill, don't we? He says that the French are just waving them through, and they are. But Princess Anne is also making a slow but sure recovery, and they also say, come on, England, you can do better. Yes, that's because it can't get much worse than drawing 0-0 with a minnow mountainous nation. But there we go. I am joined, as ever, by my wonderful press pack journalist and author Harriet Sargent, political correspondent at The Spectator James Heal, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Now, yes, just days after Nigel Farage accused the tech giant Google of election interference after he alleged that they'd blocked Reform UK adverts, a Royal Mail postie in the northwest of England has today been caught writing the word racists on Reform UK election leaflets. So that is allegedly the man doing that. Royal Mail are aware of the incident and are conducting urgent inquiries. I mean, is this... should we sack him, James? I'll start with you on this. I mean, what do you think about all of this?
Well, I don't like people losing their jobs, but I do think it, serious grounds of disciplinary work. And I just don't understand this trend of modern Britain whereby people just don't feel able to do the job for which they're contracted. We saw it with the TfL driver who was shouting free Palestine a few months ago. You see it now. It's that, this undermines, basic civic and political function in this country. He was contracted to do a job and obviously he didn't feel able to do that without, scrawling this kind of graffiti, it appears, it allegedly seems. And I think this kind of stuff makes Reform look like the victims. It backfires massively and it's just wrong. So I don't understand this modern trend, and I think the one thing is that is it happening elsewhere?
I think, actually, there is a good point that people are now, it seems to me, unable to just do the bare minimum of what their job is without, whether that's, teachers or whatever, without feeling the need to engage in some kind of weird political stunt.
Yeah, some sort of activism. Well, we've seen it all the way through the civil service, from Sue Gray down to this postman, who, incidentally, I don't think is a proper postman because he's not wearing shorts.
Oh, so you think that might be a setup?
Well, no, we're not a setup, but he's not. I mean,
I know you've got a soft spot for
postman.
posties. Last time you were on this show, you nominated as the greatest Briton.
My postman.
And it turns out to be my postman as well.
And you're a postman. And he's always in shorts.
There's a Stewart's inquiry there.
We're going to go to VAR on this postman issue. We'll see.
And he would never do anything like that.
Who would never? He's a died-in-the-wool reform man, probably. Yeah. We don't know. Anyway, Nigel, what's your take on that? Do you think that's just someone...
I just want postmen to deliver letters, not scrawl all over them, just stick them through the letterbox. That's their job. Of course he shouldn't be doing
Do you remember the good old days where they just used to nick the money outside the cars? and then we all move on.
Proper postie.
Yeah, proper good old-fashioned postie. Just takes the tenner out of your card. But anyway, now, woke Doctor Who star David Tennant sparked controversy when he made these eyebrow-raising remarks about British LGBT Awards, about Kemi Badenoch at the British LGBT Awards. You know what I mean.
If I'm honest, I'm a little depressed by the fact that acknowledging that everyone has the right to be who they want to be and live their life how they want to live it, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, should merit any kind of special award or special mention, because it's common sense, isn't it? However, until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore... I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
Yeah, OK. Anyway, Kemi Badenoch responded today, and she certainly didn't hold back. So she wrote this: I will not shut up. I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls. Now, this, for me, is where it gets a little bit interesting, OK? She says, a rich, lefty, white male celebrity... so blinded by her ideology, he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government by calling publicly for my existence to end. She does continue to say that Tennant is one of Labour's celebrity supporters. She goes on a bit about how he stood by. Now, Kemi Badenoch, I wonder if she made a mistake by bringing his skin colour into it, Harriet.
No, I think because we've seen over and over again the people who most attack women over this whole trans thing are sort of wealthy, middle-class, white males. And I feel that they can't... I find it incredibly hypocritical. I get very angry, so no, more power to her.
OK,
I'd like them attacked more.
Fair enough. Do you think there's any relevance to the fact that he happens to be a white man, or can you see the point she was trying to make? I don't know.
I see the point. I think maybe perhaps there would be a sense that others can make that point for her, perhaps. I think that, the attack was ludicrous enough as it was without necessarily perhaps going into that, but she wanted to respond robustly. I do think earlier, Patrick, you asked this programme what the best reason for voting Conservative was, I would say the answer's just been given. 2 words, David Tennant. That answer there, I think, perhaps epitomised the kind of the arrogance of a lot of this. For instance, that point he raised about doing no harm to others. Well, I think the whole basis under which she's saying about Kemi Badenoch's comments is her response to the Cass review, and of course the harm that went on there in terms of gender services for under 18s. So I think that his point is completely wrong. He's in an offensive way, and I think that she's fighting fire with fire.
Yeah, I mean, Nigel, what do you make of that?
I would, if I'd been her, I'd have kept quiet. It doesn't require a comment. I mean, we're back to people doing their jobs. I think that the Tennant should actually just stick to the job he's got and not enter politics either.
Well,
but however, so I don't go along with his attack on her. Her attack on him, I think, was unnecessary. A bit undignified. She's a cabinet minister, as you pointing out, maybe the next leader of the Tory party. I think sort of keeping her own counsel on this one and just letting it pass would have been the best way of doing it.
I get what you mean, but I think it must be tricky because that would wind me right up. Someone like David Tennant standing there say something that you think, it's maybe being a bit of a useful idiot for Stonewall as well, and you just want to put it back in his box very quickly.
I think that, like Farage, she often gets her opponents so mad they can't think properly, and I think that's a real tool for her own advancement, which is that they can't line the punches on her.
All right, interesting point. We are now... Oh, no, we're not. Before that, this is the terrifying moment that passengers were forced to use oxygen masks after a Korean air flight dropped nearly 30,000 feet in just 5 minutes. Be honest with you, I thought it was going to be a bit more dramatic than that. The Boeing plane left South Korea bound for Taiwan over the weekend, but developed a cabin pressure issue, and as we saw that there were oxygen masks there. I'll be honest, I was expecting a little bit of turbulence, but I'm now being reliably informed in my ear that 17 passengers were injured, and the dramatic footage is now happening, so I shouldn't have spoken too soon. And it comes just weeks after a 73-year-old British man sadly died after his Singapore Airlines flight experienced turbulence so severe that it plunged nearly 6,000 feet in under 3 minutes. So there we go. It is time now to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. So, Harriet, who's your greatest Briton?
My greatest Briton is J.K. Rowling. Because she seems to be the only person at the moment who's sticking up for women and who's showing, unlike the majority of our politicians, real guts and integrity.
OK, strong start. Go on, James.
Mine is the King for his excellent work today in the state visit by the Emperor of Japan. And as we said earlier, he's getting on with the job. Despite his own personal illness, he's been getting on with it and done a superb job representing the country with one of our oldest allies now. Yeah,
indeed. I saw something on Twitter just before I came on, actually, which said that at this banquet tonight, apparently, Keir Starmer has been sat next to one of the King's closest aides, and Rishi Sunak's been sat next to someone who works in AI. So read into that what you will. Go on, Nigel, who's your greatest Briton?
It's the greatest Britain. So it's a shout-out for Eamon and Isabel, Stephen and Ellie and Anne, Camilla and Nigel, and the GB News teams who then topped the Trick TV Awards today.
We won the hat trick, didn't we, today? So well done, everybody. Yes, well done to all of those people. Can I also just say well done to everybody who works behind the scenes on those shows? Yeah. Well done to everybody who, makes those kind of things happen. It isn't just, yes, whilst all of the presenters are, of course, wonderful, there is a team full of people out there who really make this happen. So well done, everybody. It is a massive, massive thing. So GB News are the winners today. It would be weird if I said otherwise, really. But I also just hope it puts quite a few people back in their flipping box, to be honest, because, we won stuff last year. We've won stuff this year. We very often win the ratings war as well at key times in the day. We are a new channel still, and we have absolutely come alive. So, at some point, people are just going to have to accept that we are here and here to stay, I think. But anyway, that's me off my soapbox now. Who's your union jackass, Harriet?
Well, this is the nurses who were laughing on the Channel 4 programme. They were laughing at the patients on the waiting list. So they're my big jackasses.
Yeah, lovely start. OK, go on.
Mine is Gareth Southgate for producing an uninspired display tonight of 90 minutes that would make Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer look positively riveting. And, all that talent, so little outcome, it's a sort of metaphor for lack of national productivity.
Yeah, I think he puts a high-vis jacket on when he goes in to check the loft. Honestly. Anyway, go on.
Mine's Julian Assange, and I think we've said enough tonight about why he is a total jackass.
Yeah.
OK, fair enough. So much so that if his lawyer had bothered to turn up, he might have said something about that. But crucially, he didn't. So there we go. Right, today's winner of the Union Jackass Award is indeed Gareth Southgate. I am increasingly wondering whether or not it's possible to sack him mid-tournament, but alas, I'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much, our wonderful panel. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight, and thank you at home, and thank you to everybody who keeps voting for us to win Trick Awards. Oh, and yes, I've got a live studio audience for you tomorrow. Be a part of it, OK? Get yourselves in this studio. I want to hear from you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Very warm and humid again for most places tomorrow. It will be a bit cloudier across parts of the east, particularly eastern Scotland. We are kind of between two areas of high pressure. An old weather front's been providing quite a lot of cloud today over parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and still producing a little bit of light rain over eastern Scotland. One or two heavy showers for southern Scotland and northern England. They should tend to fade away. For most, it's a dry night, lengthy clear skies across the south, turning a bit misty along some eastern coasts and perhaps in the southwest, and temperatures holding up, maybe no lower than 17 in the capital, but a much fresher feel in the northwest for much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. So a more comfortable night here. We should start off with quite a bit of sunshine in western Scotland, but in the east of Scotland, quite a grey start and likely to stay fairly cloudy here through the day. Could even be a little bit of rain at times as well. A brighter day, though, for Northern Ireland compared to today. A bit more in the way of sunshine. Quite a bit of cloud over the far north of England, but the bulk of England and Wales dry and sunny. Just a bit misty around some coasts in Devon and Cornwall, and the threat of this mist and low cloud lingering across parts of the North Sea coast as well. I suspect, though, much of England and Wales just dry and sunny and very warm once more. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland and the west of Scotland. But in the eastern side, as I mentioned, always likely to stay fairly cloudy with maybe a little bit of rain at times. Notice cloud and rain is edging towards the west of Northern Ireland as well. Temperatures, well, a little higher for Northern Ireland compared to today, and across England and Wales again.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom.